So we're going to take a closer look at our scaffolded pages, specifically at the C# code behind the pages, because it is something that you guys are familiar with. So first we will take a look at index. So this is our C# code that is behind the page. And as you can see, our base is page model. Index model is derived from that. And then you can see that we have a Razor Pages movie context object. It's private and it's called underscore context. So this is basically what we are going to use to interface with the database. And then you can kind of see here that we have the public facing context. So we've taken the public facing context and set that data into the private. So we have a public facing context as well. And we will be using the private context here anytime that we want to do anything with the database. So you are going to be seeing link queries in here. And the dependency injection feature, which is part of Razor Pages and C#, the dependency injection feature is what allows us to work with the context, the Razor Pages movie context. It's basically giving us everything we need to communicate with the database as long as we use the proper commands. Another thing you're going to notice in here is anytime we are communicating with the database, we are using asynchronous processing. So the command here that is actually retrieving from the database is this one. Okay, the context, it refers to the database. .movie, so the movie is the class, and to list async, it is going to retrieve everything that is stored in the database and throw it into a list. That's basically what's going to happen. And then it gets stored here. Okay. And so this is the code that is behind the scene for this index page. So it is doing the retrieval of all of the data in the database in order to display it on this page. Okay, and so you'll notice that this is connecting to the model. It's got at model Razor Pages movie dot pages, so dot pages dot movies, and this is the index page. Okay, so that is what it is connecting to. So it's going to display that information in here. Okay, and you can see that anytime we want to display information from the model, it has got, these are called HTML helpers. So it's at HTML dot display name for, and this is connecting it to the model. Here is our model. So when it says display name for, this is a heading. So if we haven't specified a different heading, it's just going to pull in the property name as the heading. Okay. And so it does that by default. And then you'll notice down here, it says at HTML display for. It doesn't say display name. It just says display for. So instead of pulling the property text for a heading, it actually is pulling the data and it's displaying the data. So where you see, this is a for each. Okay, model.movie, that is referring to our data from our table. Okay, so movie is what we had here. That is where all the data is being stored. Okay, and so when it's got title, release date, genre, price, that is all coming from here. Okay, so that is where it's getting that from. And those are the column names that are in our actual database. Okay, so that is kind of how they work together. And we can take a look at another one, but these should be fairly similar. What you aren't familiar with is how this connects to the actual page that is displayed in the UI. Okay, and so that is what we were just covering. We can take a look at the create. So here is our create C#. Again, we've got the context file. And let's see. So this is returning the page. Okay, anytime you see iAction results, you are going to have a page returned. So you'll notice this is a data annotation. It says bind property, which means if you enter data into the create page, it is binding those entry areas with the model itself. Okay, and so if I pull that up, if I go into create, okay, so all of these entry areas are being connected or bound to the actual columns that are in the database, and it's doing that through the model. Okay, so here's our create code. And so this bind property indicates that they should connect them. And so we're creating a little movie object here. You can see this is again asynchronous. And so this command is going to run when they hit create, as it says on post. Okay, so posting is when you submit. The first thing it's going to check is to see if the model state is valid. So that is checking to make sure there's no errors. If I try to create right now, I have errors. Okay. And so what it does, if there's errors, is it returns the page. It keeps you on this page because you are not allowed to actually submit until the errors are gone. So that's what this little loop is doing. Now, once I actually key data in and the data is good, then that is where we have the link code that is actually going to add the movie data to the database. And then this saves the changes. So it adds the movie data and it saves the changes. And then it's going to redirect us back to that index page that's the full listing of the movies. Okay, so here's our details page. This is only showing one. Okay, whatever one they select. And so the code behind that you see is for selecting one. Okay, so again, all of these start with the context because you have to have that. That's what's letting you interface with the database. We're creating a movie object here. And this is a retrieval command. Okay, so basically it needs to retrieve the record that was specified. And you either specify the retrieval by keying in the record up here, or by selecting it. So if I were to go back into movies, go back into the index, if I hit details, it's going to retrieve this because there is only one. But if I hit details, that's what it's talking about as far as the retrieval goes. That is the ID that it would be retrieving. If there is no ID, then you're trying to retrieve something that is not found. Well, when would that happen? Well, if I did something like this, movies, details, and then I keyed in a number that does not exist, like ID2. ID2 doesn't exist. It can't retrieve it. ID1 should exist. Oh, maybe it doesn't. It could have given a different ID to that one. So whatever ID it assigned, I would have to know that ID in order to key that in. Okay. Okay, looks like I had to key it in like this, ID equals 1. But you can see here, ID1 is there, ID2, oh, page can't be found, doesn't exist. ID1, yep, that is there, okay? So that is basically what this section is checking. And then this one is actually trying to retrieve the data. So we've got context.movie first or default. So it is looking for the first occurrence of that ID. And then if it doesn't find it, we get not found. Otherwise, it takes the data that it retrieved, okay, which would be, everything in that row, puts it into this movie object, returns the page, and that is what it's accessing out here. Okay, so again, this is display name 4. So this is displaying the column headings. And then when you see display 4, that is data. Display name 4 is column heading. Okay, and in the details, we have the column heading and then the data, the column heading and the data. Okay, so that is basically what's going on in all of these pages. All right, a couple other things about these CSHTML pages. Very first thing at the top of the page is at page. And that is basically a directive that just means that this page can handle requests. Okay, so that has to be at the top. And then we have at model that basically is connecting this to our model up here, which defines, the names of the properties. And also it's the column names that are in our table. And it basically is connecting the data to here and also to the code behind, which ends up being data that gets passed to our view, our UI. Okay, and we already talked about how every single one of these ends up getting pulled into the layout, which is why they all have that common user interface. They get pulled in at the render body line. So we'll take another look at that just to reinforce it. This is where they all come in. And let's see, we can update the layout if we would like. In fact, we want us to make a little change here. Instead of Razor Pages movie, they want the title just to say movie. So we will change that. And then on the nav bar itself, let me show you where this is. I think I still have it running. instead of saying Razor Pages movie here, they want us to change it to RP movie. So that is this text. RP movie. Let me save everything. And I'm going to do a hot little reload here. And now it says RP movie. All right. Another thing that they would like us to show is under pages, view start. So you may wonder why all of the views are using that layout. And that is because it is specified in here that the layout that we're going to use is underscore layout. And that is this page. Okay, so that is where that is being specified. And we've already talked about the create page model. And let's see. Okay, we are going to take a look at edit. Edit, create, you will see in the CSHTML files. We already looked in the fact that this is a form. And we have validation. And that validation, basically any error is displayed in the span tag. We already talked about that. But what we haven't really looked at is what this little ASP4 is doing inside our different elements. Like we have a label element and an input element. And then we've got ASP4. And you'll notice that it's got movie.title. Okay, so movie is where our data class, and .title is the property. Okay, and then for formatting, we've got classes in here that are bootstrap classes. So this is a control label and a form label. You'll notice that up here for the validation, we've got the class is text danger, which shows up in red. Okay, so that's all a part of bootstrap for that formatting. These little ASP4s are called tag helpers, and they automatically include cross-site request forgery prevention, which means if people are trying to hack into your site, they are preventing that, which is a good thing. So that is kind of built in, utilizing an anti-forgery token. So you definitely want to keep these here because they are going to help keep our application safe. So at this point, we are going to move on to our next section, which is working with the database.